I spent $85,000 planning my son's family reunion party. I booked the venue, flew everyone in, ordered the catering, arranged the flowers, handled every last detail. Because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. And then, when I walked through those doors on the night of the event, my son looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, there's no seat for you at the main table. We didn't think you'd want to sit with the important guests." I'm 67 years old. I've been building things my whole life. A business, a home, a family. I raised my son with my own 2 hands after his mother passed. I worked double shifts at my machine shop for 11 years straight so he could go to a good college, wear good clothes, and never once feel like he was less than anybody else in that school. I gave him everything I had, and he couldn't save me a chair. Let me back up a little. Let me tell you how we got there. My son. I'll call him my son throughout this, because that's the only name that matters. Married a woman named Renata about 6 years ago. She's from money. Old money. The kind that comes with opinions about everything and gratitude for nothing. I tried to like her. I really did. She's sharp, I'll give her that. Sharp tongue, sharp eyes, sharp sense of what's useful to her and what isn't. The first time I met her, she looked at my hands, my working hands, and asked what I did for a living. When I told her I owned a machine shop in Dayton, Ohio, she nodded and said, "Oh, that's nice." The way you'd say it to a child who just showed you a drawing. My son didn't flinch. That should have told me something. But I swallowed it. I smiled. I told myself, she's nervous, she's new, give her time. I gave her time. I gave her 6 years. My son and I had always been close, or at least I thought we were. After his mother died when he was 14, it was just the 2 of us. We watched football together on Sunday mornings. He'd sit at the kitchen counter and do homework while I made chili. He used to call me every Sunday, even after he moved to Atlanta for work. Then he met Renata and the calls got shorter. Then they got less frequent. Then they mostly stopped unless he needed something. I told myself that's just how it goes. Kids grow up. They build their own lives. You can't hold on too tight. So I loosened my grip. I kept showing up. That's what fathers do. 2 years ago, my son called me out of the blue and said he wanted to plan a big family reunion to celebrate the 25th anniversary of his mother's side of the family. Some tradition they apparently started doing before she passed. A big gathering every 5 years. He said Renata's family would be coming from 3 different states. His college friends, their couples from Atlanta. It was going to be a real event. He was excited. He sounded like my kid again, the one who used to call on Sundays. He asked me if I'd be willing to contribute financially, help make it special. I said, of course, whatever you need. I should have asked more questions. Over the next several months, I wired money as he asked. $20,000 for the venue, a resort outside Savannah, Georgia, with Spanish moss and white columns and the kind of porches that look like something out of a movie. Another 15 for catering. 12 for a live band and sound system. 8 for flowers and decorations. 10,000 for a photography and video crew, so everything would be documented. The flights and accommodations for 3 family members who couldn't afford to come on their own. By the time it was all said and done, I had put in $85,000. My son handled the logistics. He said he'd take care of everything. The invitations, the seating arrangements, the program for the evening, the welcome remarks. I told him I was happy to help with any of that too. He said, "No, Dad, we've got it. Just come and enjoy yourself." So I drove down from Dayton, 9 hours. I didn't fly because I still like driving. Gives me time to think, to listen to the radio, to feel like I'm going somewhere with purpose. I arrived the afternoon before the event and checked into the room my son had booked for me. It was on the 2nd floor of the main building. Small. 1 window facing the parking lot. The kind of room that says, "We needed somewhere to put you." I didn't say anything. I unpacked my suit, hung it up so the wrinkles could fall out, took a shower, and went down to the dining area to find my son. I found him at the main terrace with Renata, walking through the setup with the event coordinator. The space was beautiful. Long tables draped in ivory linen, candles everywhere, a wooden dance floor in the center. At the far end of the terrace, there was one large round table set apart from the rest. 8 chairs, better linens, taller centerpieces. The kind of table that says, "These are the people who matter tonight." I walked over. My son looked up. "Dad, you made it." He hugged me. It was one of those quick, firm, get-it-done hugs. Then he turned back to the coordinator. I looked at the main table. I counted the place cards. 8 names. I scanned them slowly. My name was not there. I figured it was an oversight. I said, "Hey, looks like you might have missed my place card at the head table." Renata looked at my son. My son looked at his clipboard. Then he looked at me. "Oh yeah, Dad. About that. We set that table for Renata's family and some close friends. It's kind of a tight fit. We put you over at table 4 with Uncle Roy and a few of the others." I just stood there for a moment. "Table 4, I said. "It's right in the middle of the room. Great view of the band. You'll have fun over there." I looked at Renata. She was looking at her phone. "My son," I said, keeping my voice even, "I put in $85,000 for this event. Dad, this isn't about money." He said it quietly, like he was embarrassed for me, like I was the one being difficult. "I know it's not about money," I said. "It's about the fact that I'm your father." "We can talk about this later," he said, already turning back to the coordinator. "Tonight's going to be a big night. Just relax and enjoy yourself." I stood there another moment. Then I nodded. I said, "Okay," and I walked back inside. I went upstairs to my room with the window facing the parking lot. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My hands were on my knees. I looked at the wall. I thought about the summer I worked 2 jobs so my son could go to football camp. I thought about the Christmas I didn't buy myself a single thing so he could have the video game system he wanted. I thought about driving through a snowstorm in February to watch a high school playoff game in a gym that smelled like old sneakers, and thinking I was the luckiest man alive because he scored 12 points and looked up at the bleachers and found me. I thought about all of it, and then I made a phone call. I called the resort's main reservation line, not the event booking, the hotel side. I asked if they had any premium suites available for the weekend. They did. They had one left, the governor's suite on the top floor, river view, private terrace, 600 square feet. The rate was $4,200 for the 2 nights. I booked it. Then I called my good friend, a man I've known since we were both welders in our 20s, one of the few people on this earth who has never needed anything from me except company, and I asked him if he wanted to drive down to Savannah for the weekend. I told him there was a suite involved. He said, "I'll leave in an hour." I went down to the front desk, got my new keycard, moved my things upstairs, and hung my suit in a closet that actually had enough room for it. I stood on the private terrace and looked out at the river. The light was going gold over the water. Somewhere below me, my son was rearranging centerpieces. I ordered room service, a proper steak, medium rare, with a bourbon I'd been meaning to try. I ate on the terrace as the sun went down. That night, I went to the reunion. Of course I did. I'm not the kind of man who makes a scene or walks out. I went, I dressed well, I shook hands. I sat at table 4 with Uncle Roy, who turned out to be a retired electrician from Macon, who told the best stories about bad inspections I'd ever heard. We laughed all night. I danced once, a slow song, with a woman who was somebody's great aunt and who told me I had kind eyes. My son gave the welcome remarks at the main table. He thanked Renata's parents. He thanked Renata. He thanked the venue staff. He thanked several friends by name. He did not thank me. I sat with my bourbon, and I listened, and I nodded, and I smiled. Not because I was pretending it was fine. It wasn't fine. But I have learned the hard way over 67 years that the moment you show a man he's hurt you, you hand him the power to do it again. So I gave him nothing. I just watched. My friend arrived around 10 that night. I met him in the lobby and we stayed up until almost 2 in the morning on that terrace, talking about nothing important. Old cars, the price of steel, a fishing trip we kept saying we'd take. It was the best part of my weekend. The next morning, Sunday, I ordered breakfast for 2 in the suite. We had eggs and coffee and watched the river. My son texted around 9, "Great event last night. Hope you had fun. Heading to brunch with Renata's family. See you before you head out." I responded, "Take your time, I'll find you." I found him around noon in the resort lobby with Renata and her parents. 2 cool, well-dressed people who looked at me the way their daughter always did. My son introduced me as my dad. He helped with some of the planning. Not he made this possible. Not he paid for most of this. He helped with some of the planning. I shook everyone's hand. I said it was a lovely event. I meant none of it. Then I pulled my son aside. "I need about 10 minutes, I said. "Just you and me." We walked out to a small courtyard off the lobby. There was a fountain. Birds. I told him I loved him. That came first because it was the truest thing, and I needed him to know it wasn't going away. Then I told him everything else. Calmly, not raising my voice, I told him that what happened last night was not an oversight. It was a choice, that when you put someone at table 4, after they gave you everything they had, you are telling them exactly where they rang. I told him I heard his welcome remarks. Every word of them. I told him that I had been patient for 6 years. Patient with the shorter calls, patient with the cooler tone, patient with a daughter-in-law who has never once looked at me like I was worth her full attention. I told him patience has a flaw. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dad, I didn't think it would matter that much to you." I let that sit in the air between us for a moment. "That," I said, "is the problem." I drove back to Dayton that afternoon. 9 hours again, same roads, different radio stations. I stopped in Augusta for gas and a cup of coffee. I sat in the parking lot for a while and watched people come and go. A man about my age walking a yellow lab. A woman unloading groceries from a minivan with 3 small kids pulling at her sleeves. Regular life going on in every direction. I thought about what I was going to do when I got home. I have a will. I updated it 2 years ago, not long after my son got married. At the time, I left everything to him. The house, the shop, the savings, all of it. It seemed like the obvious thing. He was my only child. That's just what you do. When I got home, I called my attorney. Her name isn't important. What's important is that she's been my attorney for 15 years and she doesn't sugarcoat anything. I told her I wanted to review the will. I told her I wanted to talk about options. We talked for 2 hours. 2 weeks later, I updated the will. My son still receives something. I'm his father, and I'm not made of spite. But the shop, which I built from nothing and which is worth considerably more than he probably knows, will go to my 2 long-time employees who have been with me for over a decade. They've earned it. They show up. They know what that place is. The house goes to a charitable trust I've set up for a youth vocational program in Dayton. The kind of place that teaches kids how to use their hands, how to build things, how to show up and do work that matters. The kind of program that might have shaped my son differently if I'd found it when he was young. I kept some savings for myself. I'm 67, not dead. I didn't tell my son right away. I didn't tell anyone right away. I just went on with my life, Opened the shop on Monday morning, made coffee, listened to the guys talk about their weekends. Normal. About a month later, my son called. One of those Sunday calls I hadn't gotten in a while. He sounded different. Not warm exactly, but careful, like he was approaching something cautiously. He said the reunion had been great, and he appreciated everything I'd done. I said I was glad. He said Renata had been thinking it might be nice to plan another trip together, the three of us, maybe over the holidays. I said I'd think about it. Then he said, casually, the way you bring something up that you've been thinking about for a while. Hey, Dad, I've been meaning to ask, have you done anything with the will recently? Renata's family has an estate attorney, and they suggested I should probably know the basics, just for planning purposes. There it was. I let a beat pass. Then I said, I did make some updates, yes. Silence. What kind of updates? He asked. Thoughtful ones, I said. Another silence. Dad. My son, I said, I love you. That has not changed and will not change. But love is not the same thing as an inheritance. An inheritance is something you earn. It comes from showing up. From treating people like they matter, not because of what they can do for you, but because of who they are. He didn't say anything for a long time. The shop, he started, goes to people who understand what it took to build it, I said. People who were there. He got quiet in a way I recognized. That specific quiet that means he's trying to find the angle, trying to figure out what move gets him what he wants. Renata had taught him that quiet, or maybe she'd just brought it out in him. Either way, I knew it. This isn't fair, he finally said. No, I agreed. It isn't. A lot of things haven't been fair. That didn't stop them from happening. We stayed on the phone a while longer. He cried a little, which surprised me. Real crying, not performance. I can tell the difference. I let him. I didn't rush him. When he settled down, I told him again that I loved him. I meant it both times. We've talked several times since then. He's different on the calls now. More present. More like the kid who used to sit at my kitchen counter doing homework. I don't know if it'll last. I don't know if Renata will eventually recalibrate him back. I'm 67 and I stopped predicting people. What I know is this. I spent $85,000 and I got one weekend in a beautiful venue where my name wasn't in the right place. And then I spent about 6 hours on the phone with my attorney and I got something I should have had all along. Clarity about what matters, who has earned what, and what kind of father I want to be in the years I have left. Not the kind who writes the check and fades into the background. Not the kind who sits at table 4 with a polite smile and pretends the parking lot view is fine. My friend, the welder, the one who drove down to Savannah, called me last week. He wants to finally take that fishing trip we've been talking about for years. Montana. 2 weeks. Fly fishing on the Yellowstone River, which neither of us knows how to do, which is exactly why we should go. I said yes before he finished the sentence. I'm going to Montana. I'm going to stand in a cold river and probably catch nothing and laugh about it with my oldest friend and eat bad diner food and sleep well. And when I come back, the shop will still be there, my guys will still be running it the way I taught them, and my phone will have whatever messages it has. Some things are worth $85,000. Some things are worth considerably more. After 67 years, I think I'm finally learning which is which. I keep thinking about that courtyard, the fountain, the birds, the way my son looked at me when I told him what I'd decided. Not angry, just quiet in that calculating way he'd learned somewhere along the road. And I keep thinking about what I said to him. Love is not the same thing as an inheritance. That's the thing nobody tells you when you're young and working double shifts and telling yourself sacrifice is its own reward. They don't tell you that what you do for people teaches them what you're worth. Every time I covered for my son without asking anything in return. every time I wired money without conditions, every time I swallowed an insult from his wife and smiled through dinner. I was teaching him something. I was teaching him that I would accept whatever I was given. That table 4 was fine. That a parking lot view was fine. That he helped with some of the planning was fine. It wasn't fine. I just hadn't been honest about that. Not with him, and not with myself. There's a kind of courage that doesn't look like courage from the outside. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't make a scene at a beautiful venue in Savannah while the band is setting up. It just gets quiet, goes upstairs, picks up the phone, and makes a different set of choices. That's what I did. And it took me 67 years to understand that doing that, holding your ground without crumbling and without performing, is one of the hardest things a person can do. I've been turning something over in my mind since that weekend. My son is not a bad person, I believe that. But somewhere between 14 and 40, he stopped thinking carefully about what was right and started thinking about what was convenient. He stopped asking himself hard questions about loyalty, about decency, about what a man owes the people who built him, and started taking the path that Renata cleared for him. That's not stupidity. That's something closer to moral laziness. And moral laziness, left alone long enough, becomes its own kind of cruelty. What I did with the will wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that, at least to myself. My 2 employees, the men who have shown up at that shop in rain and in heat and never once made me feel like a placeholder, they earned what they're getting. The vocational program that'll take the house. They're doing the work my son decided wasn't worth his time to understand. Rewarding people who show up, who do the right thing even when it's inconvenient, who build instead of consume. That's not punishment. That's just cause and effect. The world runs on it, whether we pay attention or not. My son is starting to pay attention. The Sunday calls are back. He's more careful now, more present. I don't know how long it lasts, but I've stopped measuring my peace by his behavior. That was the real change. Not the will, not the suite at the top of the resort. It was the moment I stopped making my sense of worth dependent on whether he put my name in the right place. I'm going to Montana next month. I'm going to stand in a cold river and probably catch nothing. And I'm going to feel, for the first time in a long time, like exactly the right person, in exactly the right person, in exactly the right place. That's enough. That's more than enough.